All right, guys, thank you for watching. This video will be a conversation that I had with Dan Barker. It'll be on the subject of prayer. He gave me a lot of pushback. For those of you who don't know, Dan Barker is a member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, an author, and an atheist speaker. I appreciate you chatting with me for a little bit, Dan. I know you're not feeling well.
I got to go in a few minutes here.
Oh, you're okay. I get it. It's been going around. My daughter was, the youngest has bad asthma. And about a week and a half ago, to 2 weeks ago, she was hospitalized for like 5 days with upper respiratory, like RSV, and all these things are going around. Especially as like now, all the social distancing is gone, and like we're all passing around common colds and things again.
Well, you know, the Bible says you should call for the elders of the church and anoint her with oil, and the prayer of faith will heal the sick. Just do that.
I think that it does at times. I really do. But I think that prayer, because it's praying in agreement with God, and God doesn't always guarantee that this will be the time that you survive. And so sometimes you're going to pray for somebody and they're going to die, and sometimes they're not. But ultimately, you're praying in God's will.
Yeah, but the New Testament says anoint them with oil, call for the elders. And
Yes. Hmm.
have you ever done that with any of your sick children?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. There's another verse in the Bible that says, all things whatsoever ye shall ask for, in faith believing, you shall receive. It doesn't say maybe. It doesn't say some things. It says all things. If you pray in faith, believing, you shall receive it. And of course, we know that that verse fails. We know that that never. That,
If you go back, I think you're in Matthew. It might be I think it's 6, and I think you're going to 7. But Matthew 6 is where it starts, where the Lord's teaching you how to pray, and it explains praying in His will, and it explains that if you're not praying for something that's in God's will, it's just not going to happen.
well, then
And
don't
so,
pray. Don't bother
no,
praying then.
because it gives you a chance to participate with God. You get to, uh, you know, join in a hand in what He's already doing.
But it's
Just like having
irrelevant.
a conversation. No,
Yeah,
because it's having the conversation with God, and it's got that importance behind it. So it's not like it's insignificant. It does a
but
lot for the soul. It does a
what I'm
lot
saying
for
is
the.
that there may be some value in that as a believer to feel you're communicating with God. But as far as the issue of the efficacy of prayer goes, it makes no difference. We all know that when you study prayer, the results, the efficacy of that which is asked for is no different than random chance. And so occasionally you're going to have something happen, and it would be a true miracle if it didn't. But if prayer really made a difference, I mean, actually made a real difference, by now someone should have won the Nobel Prize by saying, "Look, there's this force in the cosmos that's available to us that's different from random chance." So
That's the common misconception, because prayer is often strawman to be like some kind of genie that you rub the lamp and then you're going to get the wishes. But prayer in the Bible has never been defined that way. And you see examples of people praying and then people still dying. King David's son, for example, I prayed and fasted and wept and mourned, and the child still died. But he had comfort within the prayer, and he had comfort within the faith, because prayer was about that communion with God and not getting what you want always.
of course, you do know there's all those verses like the one I just quoted. All things whatsoever you shall ask for in prayer, believing, you shall receive. If two or three of you gather together and agree in my name, you will have what you ask for. There's a whole bunch of promises in the
Yeah,
Bible
but
that
you
are
gotta,
clear
like,
cut.
when you're saying that one, two of you gather and agree in my name. Well, that agreement isn't so we can agree on what we want and then petition something apart from God's will. We're agreeing with God and we're praying His will, and his will be done. I think the worst you could say about the Christian prayer is that there's not necessarily a falsification until we have the argument whether or not God exists or not, but it's just talking to God. It's never ever been God, I say God do A and God does A.
Yeah, but you know that most Christians desperately pray for certain outcomes. They're asking God for those outcomes to happen. And you also know that statistically, it makes no difference compared to random chance. We know that. So the actual prayer for an outcome, regardless of whether it makes you feel like you're communing with God or not, which might have its own meditative value, I'm not to judge that, but the actual efficacy of that which is prayed for, it doesn't work. Prayer does not work. Prayer often sometimes even fails more often than it succeeds.
Well, I think
And
if you're praying for the wrong things and you're not praying in God's will, then prayer is going to fail 100% of the time. And that's why I think like the margin of errors are wrong, because a lot of times people pray for what they want. They don't necessarily pray for what they need. And so ultimately if I'm dying and I'm praying that God heals me, well ultimately even if I die I'm going to be healed in front of the Lord. So I'm going to be getting the best outcome possible within that scenario. Now if he heals me here, then he's still got purpose and there's still something that I need to do here. But each all that's within his will always.
so let me ask you this then. Is God's will going to happen regardless of whether you pray for it or not?
Yeah, that would be the part that I would agree with, and that's why I said that the ultimate test on prayer is not whether or not you get A, B, and C when you pray for A, B, and C, but it would be on God's existence.
So then Jesus was wrong when he said, all things, whatever you ask for in prayer, believing, you shall receive.
You have to go back to those chapters before, and you have to see how he taught his disciples how to pray.
So all
Our
things,
Father art which in heaven, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Then he goes, give us this day our daily bread. So he's asking for basic necessities. He's saying, forgive us our trespasses. Like that's not like like something that we have to pray the Lord's Prayer all the time, but it is a model for prayer. It's you put God first, and then in His will. Sometimes the people you pray for are going to die, and sometimes they're not, but the Lord's will be done.
so then the words all things don't really mean all things. It has to be qualified then, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, the qualification, because when you look at like, and you know this from the scripture that like the chapter breaks weren't in the original text, the verse markers weren't in the original text. When they wrote a letter, it was compiling, especially when you start getting into Paul. Paul was huge on therefore. So if you don't have like the information understood in the two preceding chapters, then you could get really bad doctrine. You might not understand Paul and you could pull things out of context. And Jesus was the same way. Like when he told a parable, parables at most had 1 to 2 meanings. So like when somebody uses a parable and they talk about like a rich ruler or they talk about somebody being killed, well, they're taking it out of context because that's not what the parable's about. You have to get what is the derived message.
So the topic, I got to go in a second. The
Oh, you're
rise
okay.
and the rise and fall of atheism. Um, it seems like numerically, at least, atheism is rising. Maybe there's some
Mhm.
internal schisms and things, but that happens in all groups. You can't name a denomination or religion that's not a split off of something in their past. It's human
Mhm.
nature to have these divisions, and atheists are kind of proud of that fact. So, at least numerically, demographically, in the United States and in the world, atheism is rising. You can debate whether that's good or bad, but
Well, I
it's a
thought that
fact.
was the case until I started looking at newer statistics coming out, and atheism will actually shrink by like the year 2045, and it'll be about the time that Islam surpasses Christianity as the world's biggest religion as well.
What is that study?
You can a few Pew Researcher studies. What I'll do is I'll try to find these so that I can send those to you because I was shocked. But part of the reason why Islam will outnumber Christianity, and I think why atheism decreases, is a lot of atheism seems to be, at least in the United States or parts of Europe, tied to liberal values. And there's a lot more consensus about not having as many children. But when you look at Islam, one man can have up to four wives. Those four wives can have, children, and they're making bigger families. So just based on the birth rates, Islam's going to outnumber.
Yeah, maybe so, but even within Islam and in Muslim countries, atheism is growing. There's a whole lot of ex-Muslims. We just had a conference in Germany a few months ago called
Mhm.
Celebrating Dissent, where a whole bunch of, well, a lot of them are in danger of their lives because they become apostates from the religion that they were born into. But there's a whole lot of Muslims that are thinking for themselves, especially younger ones. And so to say that Islam is growing numerically because of the birth rate may not tell the whole picture. It looks like at least there's starting to be a pushback among young Muslims to reject the patriarchy of their religion and the sexism, just like it's happening with Christianity. A lot of young people are just really fed up with the anti-gay and anti-abortion, and they're fed up with the rules and the hypocrisies, and especially in the Catholic Church. It's actually a bigger problem in the Protestant Church, but in the Catholic Church, it's more visible, the rape of children by the priests and all that. So the respect for religion all over the world, there's a group within all of them that is increasing. In other words, the respect is decreasing. So that whatever it was that happened in Europe after centuries of religious divisiveness, where today most Europeans are pretty secular, religion is not that important. Seems like it's happening in the United States. You might be right, though, that in the Muslim countries, they are going to numerically take over. And what does that mean? That's just a numbers game. It's not necessarily,
Yeah,
you would agree. As a Christian, I think you would agree. That doesn't mean they're right just
yeah,
because they have
yeah,
more babies.
yeah. Absolutely not. Like, I would say that you should never take a position just based on what a majority consensus is, because the majority can be wrong. We've seen that time and time again without history. When you look at another factor, there's not a lot of atheists converting to Islam, but there are some, like a personal friend of mine. But the majority of people who convert to Islam, like 70 to 80%, is from Christianity. But the other shocking number on that is over half of those people who convert will leave Islam within 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I got to go. It's really fun talking. I'm sorry I can't hang on here. I got to.
Oh, you're good, Dan. I appreciate it. I got to see if anyone else wants to come up too. But thank you for the
We're
conversation.
we're in D.C. right now, and they're out scoping the Capitol Mall for a possible location for the new monument to Thomas Paine, which you might have heard. And our group was partly responsible for that. And Congress passed the bill last December, and Biden signed it into law. So there will be, for the first time, a monument statue to the forgotten founder of the United States, Thomas Paine. It's pretty exciting. And I can't be there today. I'm really sick, so I'm stuck in this hotel room. But it was fun talking, James.
Yeah, you as well. Take care.
Take care. Get well, Dan. Good to hear you speak.
Yeah, I always enjoy Dan. Like people ask like, James, why are you more short with some atheists than others? I said because not every atheist giving you like their honest pushback. And Dan, while I disagreed with his points, I felt like Dan always tries to give me his honest pushback, and it's always appreciated.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that guy, but I knew you were having a pretty good conversation with the guy, so I didn't want to interrupt with contention and all of that. So I just kind of sit back and listen. But yeah, I'm not a fan of that guy at all.
Well, he's one of those guys that, like Johnny, I know that if I let him say his piece and get his points out, that he's going to mute and let me talk, or that he's going to, like, try to honestly engage with my points. So even though I disagreed with him a lot, it's way easier and to just let him go on and make all the statements that he wants, because he's at least going to, let me respond, which doesn't happen on a lot of these things.
I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Ride or die.